If you ask a caveman what 1 plus 1 is, you're obviously expecting 2. But what he'll tell you is 1, 1. And obviously, you'll tell the caveman, no, 1, 1 is 11. Episode 11, Daily Nourishment. Today we're going to be talking about a topic that I rediscovered after years of not looking into it. This topic is polyphasic sleep, and I want to specifically apply that concept to how it applies to cooking. Now, for those of you that don't know, 85% of mammals don't sleep in monophasically, which monophasically is basically what we humans do, where we sleep for 8 hours at a time, then we wake up, do our 16 hours, and then go back to bed. Most animals sleep in biphasic sleep, and actually in certain cultures, like in the Mediterranean, this is more common, like in Spain, where you'll have a siesta around the afternoon, and then you'll go back to bed. That's why they sleep less in the evening, because they'll go to bed, they'll sleep their 6 hours, and then they'll take a siesta in the afternoon. So polyphasic sleep is basically expanding on this idea with different routines, such as the everyman, which is where you have one core block of sleep for like 3 to 4 hours, and then 3 30-minute naps throughout the day, all the way to the extremes like the Uberman, which is 6 to 8 equally spaced 20-minute naps throughout a day. No big sense of sleep. Now that sounds crazy to everyone. And I think it especially sounds crazy to me because I relate a lot of a day to the day resetting when I have my full sleep. So how would a day really reset if you don't have a full sleep? But that's besides the point. The main idea of this is not getting everything in one bite. It's like eating, right? You don't eat in one section, you eat in multiple sections. And I wanted to apply this to getting better at cooking, which I think the best way to do is to practice. So I wonder if instead of sitting down for one session of practice, if sitting down for multiple sessions of shorter practice spaced out throughout the day would be more beneficial. And if you were to do that, what ways of practicing would be better? So I've discussed 3 different ways that you can do, which would be learning and then applying, applying and then applying, and then learning and learning. So what these would look like, let's start with learning and learning. So learning and learning would be you go in the morning, let's say at 9 o'clock, and you do 2 hours of reading, 2 hours of study about a certain food topic you're interested in, right? Let's say you read about the different properties of limes and their uses in different parts of the world. Then again at 5 to 7, you would do another revision of different work. Let's say this time you are looking at the medicinal properties of ginger and how the flavors accentuated through that could be used in your cooking, and how you could maybe make a storyline about ginger being a really healing ingredient in cooking. Now, this would greatly, I think, increase the knowledge you have, but without actually applying this knowledge, I feel like this would be, hard to get any actual gain from, which is where the next method would come in. This would be doing and doing. So this would be, for example, picking a recipe, cooking it once in the morning, and then cooking it again in the afternoon. Now, this way you'd be able to overcome a lot of the hurdles that come with cooking a recipe the first time, which is, you cook the recipe and then maybe something goes wrong, maybe you burn something, maybe you find that it asks you to do a medium dice and you mistook that for a large dice, or maybe you did the medium dice and you found a large dice was needed. Maybe you found that the recipe was asking you to use a particular oven temperature, but because every oven is a little bit different, your oven actually needed it to cook a little bit longer at a colder temperature. There's all these factors that come with doing a recipe for the first time that you actually can't know unless you make the recipe. And then the third method of learning would be learning and then doing, or doing and then learning. And I want to specifically highlight doing and then learning. Let's go with the recipe example. Let's say you cook a pad thai dish in the morning, and then you cook it and you go through the motions of, you make your mistakes and then you write down these mistakes. And in your learning, you're going to look for specific solutions for those mistakes and ways of personalizing that dish to be your own. That way, you could take that concept of a pad thai and you could go, I wasn't really a fan of this type of noodle that I used. I am someone who more prefers a more maybe rigid noodle. What is an alternative I could use? And then you would do some research regarding this. Or maybe you'd go, I think these flavors are really interesting. What if I tried pairing them with coconut or with nutmeg? Flavors not usually associated with it. That way you are making it your own, and you're also engaging your thought process of how you're thinking about food. Now, the last alternative of this is that you'd be learning and then doing. And I think this one is kind of similar to this. This would be more of like you spend some time theory crafting, but really thinking about exactly what you're doing. You want to fully outline your intentions. And then when you're doing them, the important thing is to make observations on how your application was in the beginning. Right? So I'm going to do a quick ranking of how I think these different methods would be practical. I think the best one, hands down, is going to be doing and then learning, because that way you are directly able to learn from the things that you've done, and that way you are able to personalize it for yourself. Ideally, I think it would be do, learn, do, and then you're actually putting into practice the things that you've learned at the end of the day. I think the next most useful one would be learning and then doing, because then again, you're working both sides. I don't think having one side worked more than the other is really going to be beneficial. And that's why I'm putting doing and learning as an equal one. I think for different people, one of them will appeal more than the other. But I think those are both kind of on the lower tier because they don't really get you engaging. And I think as a chef, especially, you really want to work in the beginning of your career on being well-rounded before you can figure out that thing that really makes you special as an individual and unique and gives you a unique set of skill sets. What do you think of this way of learning? Do you think this is something that you could practically apply? How do you find you get the best learning out of your time that you have to learn about food and about just any topics in general? Let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll see you for tomorrow's episode.